Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is an IFBB Figure Pro. Today's guest is Shelby Guillaume. Shelby, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, I need to correct you though. I am not a pro yet. I will be competing for my pro card again this year. I'm nationally qualified though, and yeah, hopefully by the end of this year, we snag that card.
Absolutely perfect. I love it. And you will snag it this year in 2022. That's the mindset, right?
That's what I feel. Yeah.
Cool. Love it. All right. So Shelby, I've got a couple of questions I like to ask all of my guests just to kind of start off the conversation with. So the first question I have for you is, who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
So I got into the game pretty late, and I really started training for it a couple of years ago, but I really fell in love with the sport with it more recently. I really love watching open. I love the guys that are like really killing it out there and pushing limits right now. Nick, Ian, kind of the new guys that are like making their way and putting their name out there. Sid Gillian is obviously like the leader of figure right now. And she always looks phenomenal. My Fitness Beauty, that's her Instagram name. Her shape is always like the standout, like most crazy looking, great thing out there. So like she'll always be a favorite of mine. And yeah, it's just really everybody that's kind of just like working as hard as they can and pushing limits now. Arnold obviously is a big one in there too. I think he's got a soft spot in everybody's hearts, but yeah.
Very cool. Now I want to ask you here, just kind of branching off that first question. Was there like a bodybuilder or a female athlete that you kind of first saw that kind of inspired you or kind of caught your eye in terms of like, maybe this is something that I would like to do with myself?
Well, I started in Bikini and was kind of muddling my way through figuring out where I fit. And I wasn't really sure where that was yet, but I was really just kind of putting all of what I had into trying to be whatever it is that I could be. I discovered pretty quickly that bikini was not for me. Went in like a deficit of 1,200 calories for 5 months. I grew giant shoulders. So, but yeah, I don't know. Like I think a lot of us too, like when we first kind of look at bodybuilding, we all start with the smaller shapes and the categories that aren't necessarily bigger people. And then the more you fall in love with the sport, the more you're around it, the more you kind of look to like, no, I want to be bigger and I want to be better and I want to be, so yeah, it's just, my tastes have definitely evolved. And two, it's just like, I really want to focus on like my shape being the very best it can be always. So always looking for ways that I can improve that is probably my biggest inspiration over anything.
Love that. Beautiful. All right. So tell us, Shelby, at what age did you start lifting weights? And then why did you start lifting weights at that age?
Okay. So I may have like started tinkering around with really horrible mat workouts in the gym when I was really young, but I didn't really get serious until probably 26 or 27. When I moved out of the very small city that I grew up in, where bodybuilding didn't really exist, especially for girls, and moved to Ottawa and was actually around a few people who kind of exposed me to the sport and kind of made me feel like it might be something for me.
Very
so
cool.
After that, it kind of evolved. And the longer you go, the more you learn about your body, the more you learn about the gym. The first year I will like always say to people, like, it's really good to have a helping hand, because I know my first year, like, may as well just scratched it off, like with the stuff that I did. But yeah, I think I'm doing okay now. Yeah.
Very cool. So you definitely kind of got into the game a little bit later in life then, huh?
For sure.
Okay, awesome. So I want to kind of transition. I used that last question, Shelby, to kind of transition into your backstory just a little bit more, and specifically your childhood. So just talk about growing up in Canada. talk about some of the family dynamics, talk about any sports or anything that you were involved with. Just paint that picture for us in terms of childhood up to about high school, and then we'll transition from there.
Sounds good. So my story is probably a lot different than what most people's look like. I grew up in a very, very small town of 77 people. My dad farmed, my mom worked a lot, so sports weren't really a thing. Our school was 30 kids, all meshed together. We were pretty much learning what everybody else was learning. And I spent most of my time either like running around outside or just being inside, drawing, doing whatever you kind of could to entertain yourself on the farm, essentially. And then we were eventually bused into the city. And that was definitely a culture shock from somebody who was wearing their older brother's hand-me-downs. But I always had an affinity for wanting to be in sports. I kind of was just never able to with where we lived. I always ran everywhere, and I was always like a stronger person, I felt, even as a kid. But yeah, I just never really had an outlet that I could really get into. So I guess that kind of came later in life for me, and when I was really able to focus on something physical that I could fall in love with.
So is there something, I'm from the Midwest in terms of the United States. So there's a lot of farming, a lot of small communities here. The town that I grew up in is less than 5,000 people, not quite as small as yours, but it's fairly small, and it's mostly farming. So there's a lot of hardworking people, a lot of people that are very down to earth and genuine. Is work ethic something that you kind of learned or gleaned from your dad, from your parents growing up, or not necessarily?
Yes, I would say a no-nonsense attitude. We do it now, get everything done. It doesn't matter if somebody else didn't do it, you can do it. Attitude was definitely huge. That's my dad. Like, a lot of people have bodybuilders, I guess, for their inspirations. My dad would do anything and could do anything. He would think around anything, and he was just such a strong individual. And for me, that's what kind of keeps me pretty much pushing as hard as I possibly can all the time.
Very cool. So talk to me a little bit about high school. How was high school for you? I mean, what did you kind of spend your time doing in high school? Were you into school? Were you into academics, or not really?
I was into academics initially. I didn't really fit in very well growing up either. Yeah, I just always kind of felt a little, I don't know. I think I found out later on in life that I kind of have, I learn a bit differently than most people. I'm a very hands-on learner. So I really had to teach myself a lot of things in school to be able to learn them. So, and then I just, yeah, because I lived out of town, I wasn't really able to hang out with other people after school and do all these things until I was quite a bit older. And then school started slipping when kind of going out became a thing. And unfortunately, yeah, school slipped a lot with that. I think I was just really, when I was younger, trying to find my niche, and I would skip or just have different groups of friends every few months and try. And it was just, yeah, a lot of trial and error. Being in a small community, it definitely doesn't help that, I think, when you're someone who's kind of trying to do something that's not really with the grain. But yeah, so I eventually left. And I think that was I think that everybody needs to do that. They need to leave their small home city or town and experience something totally new and be able to kind of decide who they are to themselves instead of whatever they kind of was given by the people that they grew up with.
100%. That's some wise words. Now, I want to ask you about something because, I try to through Instagram, through social media, I try to be prepared for my conversations with my guests. I don't like to just, not know anything about them. So something that I came across on your Instagram, one of your posts, we're talking about social anxiety. Okay. Now that's something, not necessarily social anxiety, but anxiety is something that I personally have struggled with, throughout my life. So I want you, if you don't mind, to talk about that a little bit. Was that something that you recognized at a young age in high school, before high school, or was that something that you kind of experienced post high school? Talk about that a little bit. And then how have you been able, Shelby, to kind of work through that and manage that? Because that's something that I think a lot of people, maybe not social anxiety, but anxiety in general, all of us, I think on some level, deal with that at some point in life. So talk about that, please, a little bit.
For sure. I think I knew from a very young age that I felt very, that I just ticked a little different than everybody else. And it was always really overwhelming to be around a lot of people. For a while, because I was so uncomfortable with it, I got really good at copying others and becoming someone I wasn't. And when I was into my, high school years, drinking alcohol became a really big crutch. That's when I actually started, hanging out with people and having friends that I could go out with and I could drink with. And it was so much easier because I didn't have this complete dread every time I was going out to a party, or, this feeling that something was always going to go wrong. And it just kind of made that go away. And then I kind of realized quickly, luckily, within a few years of that that's definitely not what I wanted my life to look like. And then I needed to kind of figure out something else. So I think definitely going to the gym and like being a part of the bodybuilding community, having my body be just like one of my own able ways to express myself, as well as like how I speak and how I think and blah, blah, blah. But it's definitely still there. Like I know, for example, my last show in BC was kind of like really super rushed. It was 2 weeks after my previous show where I had just missed out on my pro card. I had a lot of emotions. It was a huge amount of travel. We literally, I had to go from one end of Canada to the other. And there was just tons going on behind the scenes. And a lot of the times, like behind shows, I love being on stage. I love bodybuilding, but that huge flux of competitors backstage, and you see a lot of them just ebbing towards each other and being super excited. I'm kind of more so the person that's just going to be dead quiet and kind of focusing on themselves and just trying to imagine what they're going to do on stage and how it's going to go, trying to be okay with whatever happens, but also, definitely wanting to do as best as you can. And again, I am getting better at it. I will say, like, I'm probably still that girl at the gym that looks super intense, that people are scared to come towards. And not all of me hates that, because again, like, I like going there and doing my thing. And yeah, it makes it difficult. And I think it also is one of those things that pushes people into different careers and different hobbies or sports, or just things where they can kind of focus on themselves instead of needing to worry about everybody else, because it just can become really overwhelming.
Right. So is there mentally, like with your mind, how you think, like, has that developed and changed over the years to kind of help you with that anxiety? And if so, where do you kind of allow your mind to go, or how do you control your mind to kind of help you just navigate life, navigate the anxiety? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. I think that I've definitely matured a lot over the past few years. And I am a very introspective person. And I think a big part of that is, instead of pretending that these things don't exist, that we fully acknowledge them and try to basically revel in them and see what it means to us and how we let it define us, and how we choose to let it define us. Because no matter what's going through our heads or what we're dealing with, we still choose to let it control us, or let it dictate how we make decisions and how we see the world. And so a big part of it was just trying to reset the whole way I've been taught to view everything, and kind of just really look and say, like, I'm going to decide how I will view the world and give myself the grace to, sometimes you have bad days, sometimes things seem darker than others, but not to let that dictate my day, not to let that dictate the things that I have to do. And I feel like when you do that, it just kind of rewires your brain to gear yourself away from like getting stuck in those ruts of, starting to really let that again start bringing you down a path that wouldn't be good for you.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that, Shelby. So let's talk, let's take a step back into your story. So once you graduate from high school, where did life kind of take you from there?
Everywhere. My dad passed when I was 17, just before I graduated. So I kind of spent 2 years aimlessly partying like an idiot with a bunch of friends and not really knowing where the hell I wanted to be or where I wanted to go. And then I probably did just about a little bit of every education in the book, trying to figure out where I fit in the world. I took hairdressing for a little bit. I worked at a daycare. I did professional painting. I went to a university for a little bit. I tried dental hygiene. Like I jumped in so many different directions that other people told me I should do, that I felt like the world told me I should fit into. And probably the very last one, I did finish my RMT, however, my massage therapy. And I feel like that's been a huge influence on my ability to really jump a couple steps ahead in terms of kind of being up behind in my age in bodybuilding, but like my knowledge of the body kind of really helped that. But I remember I went to school for dental hygiene in Ottawa for like a month and sitting in a circle of girls talking about school and like work after, and they're just like buzzing about it. And like, I just remember saying to them, which was probably kind of a rude thing at the time, but just being like, how do you even like look ahead of your life and be like super excited for something that's just so redundant and boring? And they just like all looked at me super blank faced. And I kind of sat back and I was like, wow, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. And I literally quit the next day. And then I started a nutrition course. I went to Thailand to learn yoga teaching for a month because yoga could kind of come into my life a bit more. So I am a certified yoga teacher, believe it or not. But I did take a lot away from that experience for my mental health and of course for my physical health. It was amazing. And as soon as I got back, I kind of just had, I don't know, a really clear idea of what I wanted to do. And I contacted a friend of mine about a friend of his to start working with as a coach. And I really just threw myself into it. And yeah, I placed first and second at my first show and in Bikini. And then it kind of just, I immediately grew too big. And then, yeah, it kind of just progressed from there.
So where did the idea, or where did fitness and competing, where did that kind of like enter into your consciousness, right? You said you went to Thailand, you learned yoga and things, and you got some clarity when you came back. Like, was there an experience when you were younger, or, you know, in those early post high school years that somehow you kind of had this idea of maybe this is something that you might want to do at some point? Or how did that come to be again in your mind?
So I would say I had little hints my whole life about what bodybuilding was that I never really got into. Remember, I had like a boyfriend in high school that was super into bodybuilding that I didn't like pay any mind to. And yeah, a bunch of other just little experiences of it just like popping up in my life and disappearing. And then like once I was able to get out of my small city, I was in Ottawa for a little bit. I was kind of really able to just like reflect a lot on maybe what I wanted to try. I did know that I always wanted to get into, like, I really had like regrets that I never got to get into any sports. And I really kind of, a lot of it came from too is wanting to feel better about myself, wanting to feel better about my body, because I think obviously that's a lot of things, like, that's a big thing that everybody struggles with, but like women especially, body image is obviously a huge issue. And so that was definitely a part of it as well, I would say at first. But I adapted to it really quickly. I usually just, I'm a type of person to throw myself into something completely and see how it feels. And like, I'm just not a dip your toes person. And then if it feels good, if it fits, I'm going to do it until it stops feeling good. So I don't know, bodybuilding just became more and more my life. And even the culture of it now in the last few years, the people within it, it just takes, I think, not a different kind of person, but it takes a lot for someone to really do that, to throw themselves completely in something, but then continually do it and put like all of their body, like everything that they have every single day into something. And I don't know, I just really admire that. I think maybe that because I saw that in my dad, that I could really mesh with the idea of that. And it just stood out to me as something that I think that I could really be a part of and do well at. And so far so good. But
Sure,
yeah.
Cool. So talk to us a little bit then, Shelby, about competing in bikini. Talk about your first competition, your first couple competitions, and then just discuss a little bit of like your evolution as an athlete, going from bikini to figure, and just talk about some of those processes that you've gone through in terms of learning about bodybuilding more, learning that, hey, maybe bikini isn't for me, I need to do figure. Just talk a little bit about that evolution and those processes, please.
For sure. So starting out was a lot of trial and error. I will say one of the biggest things I learned from that experience is that people could take away from this is hire a very good coach, one that has a very good reputation, who has a lot of education, and who actually cares about your growth within bodybuilding. Unfortunately, the coach that I had at the time was pretty hands-off, and me being so very, very new, like I didn't know what IFBB was from IDFA and blah, blah, blah. So there's actually, I think we forget now that we're so involved in the sport, we actually forget how overwhelming it can be for someone starting out, how big like the world is and how many little things you need to know. But yeah, so I fortunately had a coach that was kind of really happy to just take my money essentially. So the first year, I think just because of my background in massage and stuff, I was able to muddle through it and kind of self-teach. I actually never had a trainer until I started working with a coach later on that wasn't necessarily my trainer, but we would just train together, which was like a big thing too. But yeah, so my first show was in Coburg a couple of years ago, and I got first in, we had a huge novice class. I think it was like, they had to split it up because it was like 60 girls. So they did a tall and a shorter, and I won out of the 30, and then I got second in my height class. It was a really rough show. My sisters and my mom came to watch, and they all snore, and I had the audacity to share a hotel room with them. So I didn't sleep the night before. And I don't know, it was a huge learning experience, I will say. Like, I was also behind because my coach wasn't really talking to me the whole day. I was literally there from, I think, 5 a.m. when they started makeup. And instead of like going by the hotel and chilling and blah, 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 I stayed there in the nice plastic room in my studded bikini and heels until midnight when I went on for the second time at night. So it was like the longest day ever. But it was I still really enjoyed it despite all of that. And then we decided to go right to nationals. That was, I think it was like 6 or 7 weeks later. I was probably in like a deficit of 1,200 calories. I think that I would have done extremely well on that show. my body from all of the stress crashed about 4 days beforehand. And I looked less good than I could have. So we ended up with 5th or 6th. But then too, like the biggest comments I got back from the judges as well were like, your legs are too big, your shoulders are too big. And I'm like, I'm literally like in a natural show, I've had 1,200 calories for like 12 months. And I'm like, okay, clearly this isn't working. So, and I also started working with a different coach for that show. And I continued on with her to the Ottawa show. I think that was 6 to 8 weeks later. And we're just like, we're going to go straight to figure, just diet down. So I got way overstarved for that show. Did well, got first in my height. The biggest comment was basically that I didn't have mature muscle, which made sense because I basically went from nothing to figure in a year. And then, so like, yeah, the biggest game plan after that was, you know, put mature muscle on, put sides on, start fitting the category more, blah, blah, blah. I ended up working with a coach from Toronto after that, who I worked with very closely for some time in my off season. Because of all of that stress of 3 shows in a year though, and the extreme dieting, my metabolism was shot. I ballooned out, which was really super fun, for like a good 6 or 7 months after that. And my body was just wrecked. So yeah, big learning thing for, I think everybody is just like reverse properly. Again, get a coach that cares about your health and won't let you go from show to show, won't keep you on 1,200 calories for freaking months on end. Another thing too is the biggest thing you learn, I think, as you climb up is posing is so freaking important. And if you do not work on posing at least 30 minutes a day, you're not going to do well. You're not going to do well. It's just like, even in your off season, you have to be able to move your body. And if you cannot present the physique that you have, it doesn't matter if you blow everybody out of the water, you're going to lose. You have to know how to pose yourself. So with COVID actually started happening a couple months after I started working with this new coach. We were going to aim for the Toronto Pro that year, Pro qualifier. And then COVID happened. And I think I might have taken off like a whole 6 or 7 months from the gym because I just wasn't able to work out, which was very painful and not good for my mental health, I will also say. It was definitely a big struggle when you become so accustomed to something that your brain loves and it's taken away from you, and it was hard. So it wasn't until much later again in that year that I was able to kind of get back on the horse. It was basically last year. And so all of last year, I started working with another coach. And then we prepped all year for the last 2 shows at the end of the year. And they went well. I will again say the biggest thing is just like, do not be afraid to find a coach that suits you and fits you and who you have similar training styles to and who you don't feel uncomfortable talking to and who genuinely just wants you to do well. So yeah, I'm working with Ben Chow now, which is really awesome. Super excited. And we'll be looking at a show in October for the first one. And I feel like that one will be the only one needed before we do any pro shows, but I don't want to be too over the top with that. And then if I could, I probably feel like we'd be ready to do a pro show at the end of the year. We're kind of aiming for just basically being ready for that level at this point. So yeah.
Very cool. So I want you to talk a little bit more because I feel like, especially for the females that are going to be listening to this, Shelby, going back to the coach thing, right? I just feel like there's so many coaches out there. There's so many coaches on all kinds of different levels. And there's just a lot of illegitimate coaches, especially from my perspective, illegitimate in terms of working with females, because you guys, it's a whole different ball game. You know what I mean? The hormones and just everything like that. And if we are introducing PEDs and stuff like that, like you said, you need to have somebody in your corner that knows, right? And that has worked with females, that understands your guys' side of things in terms of hormones from guys. So would you go a little bit more in depth, just talking to the ladies out there about how can they, if they're kind of just like in that position you were, like they want to compete for the first time, right? Where do they go? Like, yes, we know that we can go to Instagram, but Instagram's like a sea of craziness when it comes to trying to find a coach. But how can they look for a coach that's going to work for them in the beginning? And then how do you kind of know, like, hey, this coach isn't working for me, I need to look for somebody else? Just talk about how you've gone through that and maybe some lessons you've learned talking to the ladies, please.
All right. So especially if you're new, you're definitely not going to know your own training style. You're definitely not going to know what actually works for you. You probably don't know your own body very well. So throwing those things aside, funnily enough, the two best coaches I think I've ever had were guys. The biggest things you have to look for, I think, is education. And education towards something that helps the sport is nice. But I don't know, it just says something to me when somebody has, background in what they're trying to do, not just whatever they've, gleaned from being with coaches for 15 to 20 years and picking and choosing what they liked from it for their own body, and then just throwing it together and giving it to people. I strongly believe that having education besides that matters. For the most part, sometimes we'll see coaches that have been coaching for 20 years and they have like 6 Olympians under their belt. I probably don't care if they have education in nutrition, because they probably know what they're doing. So yeah, definitely look at the athletes. Look at their off seasons and look at their preps. Look at how healthy they transition through them. Don't be afraid to reach out to them and ask them like what coaches have worked for them, or if they'd recommend somebody. If you have an athlete or athletes that you look up to, don't be afraid to pick their ear and see what they think would be a good fit for you. I'm sure like every single person who's just super involved in that sport would be more than happy to help with that. Make sure that your coach puts emphasis on educating you. If you feel that you're just being told what to do, not how to do it and not why you're doing it, leave. Because personally, I have a really big issue with not trying to educate your athletes and telling them why they're doing something, because if you're not, I feel like there's a big thing in their head that's going to be telling them to do something else. And if they don't have you telling them why they're doing that, they're going to do that other thing. So, and then, a lot of coaches wonder, well, why didn't you just do what I told you? Because you're just ordering them around like a freaking object, and that doesn't work that way. Posing too, again, like if they don't put a big emphasis on posing and shuffle it off, like my second coach, when I was trying to learn how to open my lats up, would just be like, don't worry, you'll get it. And I'm like, no, I freaking won't get it because I don't know how to do it. You're not showing me how to do it. So now I have to figure it out on my own, but I'm paying you. So that's another thing. Like, don't forget that you're paying your coach. So like, it's like, you should be asking to get like everything that comes with that out of it. My first coach too, like I was paying her $250 a month to basically like never change my diet, like basically through my whole time of working with her until prep. She told me she didn't want to do posing with me. I never heard from her. She would take a week to freaking answer me back. And that's not okay. It's not okay to be treating athletes like that, new people to the sport, because you're going to sour them to it. Like, no wonder we have so many like less people interested in it, when you have coaches that just don't show any interest into their athletes and their lives and growing into the sport and reversing. Like, she didn't even reverse me, wasn't even going to. So I had to jump in with somebody else. And reversing is such an important part of like making sure somebody's health is okay.
Tell us how you really feel, Shelby. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much it.
No, I really appreciate that perspective, and I know the ladies listening will too. Now, I want to ask you, how did you come across Ben Chow, and why did you choose to go with him?
Well, Ben helps coach Hunter Labrada, which is obviously a very big strong point. He had just seen my physique before on Instagram and pointed out that I had a strong physique. I also listened to the Fuad show like religiously. And so I kind of know a little bit about, beforehand, I knew what his training style was, a little bit more of what his coaching style was. And it just seemed to be a really good fit for me. So I reached out, and we've been working together for maybe a month and a half now. And yeah, I'm super excited to have him in my corner for my upcoming shows. So yeah,
excellent. So training philosophy, training style, how has that kind of evolved for you? And then how do you kind of train current day, Shelby?
Right. So I'm always a fan of volume, love volume. I like, especially, I've always done for shoulders, especially, I've always done a lot of extra set and drop sets, love drop sets. Freaking, you want to grow muscle, do drop sets. Yeah, I was never into like any kind of strong 1 PR, blah, 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 2 sets things. No, like 3 to 4 sets always, 10 to 12 pretty much always, with drop sets often. I will just say getting really proficient at having intent when you work out is probably the biggest thing ever that I don't see at all with 99.9% of people. Throwing weight around is not doing anything for you. It's just like slowing down the movement, making it super intense. I think it's Milos that's like one of the guys that really like speaks about this, is like all your movements should be so like slow and controlled, and your muscle should be contracting throughout the entire movement, not just at the bottom, not just at the top. You shouldn't be taking the muscle out of its range of motion, and just all these little things that make up how to actually grow a muscle and how to actually have that muscle firing in the movement. Because half the time you see people not even working the right muscle within doing something. And so again, yeah, everything should be with intent.
What's your current training split kind of look like?
So right now we just switched it up. So Monday is, what is it? It is, I think it's shoulders, and then hamstrings and glutes, back, rest day, and then quads and calves, and then shoulders and back, and then rest day. So as a figure, I have a breast augmentation done, so therefore I do not train chest. I've not trained chest since. And then arms, once you have sizable enough arms, I think in figure or bikini, you kind of don't really need to train arms anymore. I'll throw it in like once a month for funsies, but that's pretty much it. Yeah, so we're really focusing on bringing my back up, bringing the shoulders up, and like, you know, just again creating that, we say V shape in figure, but I feel like it's becoming much more of an X frame, because it's more and more emphasis is now again put on having a lower body as well as an upper body. So yeah, it's really just keeping the waist small, growing everything, keeping everything balanced, and yeah.
Excellent.
I think too, a big thing. Yeah.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say a big thing we're gonna be focusing on is conditioning. That's one thing I struggled with my last coach, my last shows. So yeah, I think a big thing we're going to be focusing on is bringing conditioning in super hard this year.
Excellent. Cool. All right. So talk to me about this firefighter thing. I saw pictures of you as a firefighter on your Instagram. So where does this come into play, Shelby?
So I actually moved to Toronto to take my firefighting at Festi, which is a college there. It was interrupted by COVID. We had to come back to finish. So I did finish, and then I mentored there for 4 additional months and like helped teach classes and drove trucks to the fires, and it was really amazing. So I have all of my firefighter training. COVID has still been happening, so to travel anywhere to do the testing is impossible. And no offense to Saskatchewan, but I would like to live in a bigger place. So it's kind of just been, I decided when I came home last January, like I can't focus on my firefighting, which is kind of my like other, thing that I now enjoyed. But so it's just like, okay, well, we'll focus on bodybuilding, and we'll do that until we can either balance the two out, or I need to kind of switch tracks. But yeah, it definitely helped being a strong female in that field. And I will say, like, it is something that you need to be strong in. But it was a really good experience, and I met a lot of really great people. I like a lot of good mentors as well through that. Like, you meet a lot of great guys usually that have been on the fire working for like 20, 30 years. And yeah, they're just like all really great people. So that was really nice to be around. And I was really grateful for that experience.
So I'm curious, how did you even like think about getting into firefighting? Like when did that come to be?
It was something that I was actually interested in for a long time. But again, it was one of those things that in the community that I grew up in wasn't really something that girls did, or that we were really told we could do. So I kind of just put it in the back of my mind. And then like once I was like far enough in bodybuilding that it's like, holy crap, I'm pretty freaking capable. And then my mom also being like, you need to have a backup and you need to have a job. I'm like, okay. So I took firefighting. And yeah, so I'm definitely not, bodybuilding careers don't last forever. Nobody's does. And so I won't be, upset when I have to transition to fire, because it's definitely an amazing job that you can give back to people too. And the physical aspect of it is just like great to me. The hard work, everything. So yeah.
Okay, cool. So something else I want to just discuss with you, or have you kind of talk a little bit more about, Shelby, that I saw on your Instagram is, and you kind of alluded to it, or you lightly touched on it earlier, but it's the fact of so often in life, especially when we're growing up, and I think maybe even more so in smaller communities, we're kind of expected to do certain things or become certain things, right? And on one of your Instagram posts, it was very long, and I read it because I really valued it and appreciated it. But you just talked about like for so long in your life, you were trying to like maybe try to be or do things that other people wanted you to do. So talk about again that experiences or those experiences, and how you've been able to kind of like step into who you want to be as a human being and as a woman. Does that make sense?
Yes, for sure.
Cool.
Yeah. So yeah, from a very young age, it was kind of, you had these options where we live, and this is the box that you have to fit in, and this is the kind of person that you should be, and this is the type of female that guys are going to like around here, and this is, you should be looking towards your future, marrying a man that probably works in a trade, and you'll probably be a teacher or a nurse, and you'll probably have 2 kids, and he'll probably spend most of the time on the road, and that will be your life. And that's just never sat well with me, surprisingly. And so I guess my whole life I tried to just poke at different things and see if I could fit myself into them, or like slight alterations of versions of things that people said I had to be, in order to, I don't know, feel like I belonged somewhere. Because again, it just never sat well with me that was the setup. So I did actually briefly live in a bigger city, 2 hours away from mine. And that was kind of like a little bit of a shift. But yeah, like after the 2 probably solid years of just like being super lost and partying was when I finally started to be like, there's no way I can be this person. I don't want this for my life. I don't know how I could even keep going on like this. Like, it's just not who I want to be. And so I just kind of began a lot of introspective trial and error, that it would have been really nice, I think, that I would have been able, if I had been able to do that as a kid, to be able to feel like I could pursue anything I wanted to pursue and be whoever I wanted to be, that I would have been a lot farther along in maybe kind of knowing where I did fit. That being said, a lot of, everything that I experienced in my life as a whole is what made me where I am today. So I can't ever be, angry or resentful of that, because there are probably a lot of life lessons and things about myself that I learned and that I can hold on to now today. And again, like, I think a lot of people feel like they can't start over, or they can't start things that are new when they're 27, 28, 29, where it's just like, you have so much life ahead of you. Like, you don't need to be stuck to the ideals that you were handed down and like pushed into your head by all the other people around you. Because it's never too late to just like pick up your feet and be like, this is not me and I want something else.
Amen. I love it. That's great. And that's beautiful, Shelby. So do you feel like bodybuilding has kind of given you a really strong identity, or do you feel like it's really empowered you to be more of who you want to be in terms of this transformation, or this individual that you're striving to become?
100%. I feel so much now that I won't ever let anybody tell me who I should be, or to quiet my voice, or to not stick up for what I believe in. And it's not even so much like being a big person now and being intimidating to other people. It's more so just like, you spend so much time, and like there's so many things that come out of like pushing yourself to your very limits every single day, and having that patience of like not having immediate gratification. And again too, like I remember just being a really, really bright kid, super full of life, and super wanting to try everything and do everything. And it kind of got really repressed by my peers. And I became like a much darker version of myself. And it wasn't until I basically started bodybuilding again that I was just like, I wish I'd never, ever let anybody dim my light and tell me that I had to be anything less than I was. Like, we're so worried to fit in with these like little boxes that people give us, when it's just like, you can make your own box and you can make it as big as you want and just do what makes you happy.
For sure, for sure. So with everything that's been going on, and I'm specifically referring to COVID, right? But like everything I hear in terms of Canada, like it's been a lot more extreme up there. Maybe it's in different areas, kind of like it is here in the States, like California, New York, and some different states in the United States. It's been a little bit more extreme, but overall, I mean, you've got the truckers up there now kind of doing their thing. But for you and just the strong individual, the strong woman that you are and that you're becoming, how do you kind of approach, and we don't have to necessarily like talk about like COVID, but like all these happenings that are going on in Canada and around the world with COVID, how do you kind of stand up and stand your ground, Shelby, with all of that stuff? And how can you encourage people, whether they're whatever their point of view is with COVID, but how can you encourage people to stand up for what they believe in as well?
The biggest thing that I think everybody can do is basically to form, after like a lot of, like with any argument, listen to both sides, do all your research, have an unbiased look at what is presented to you, and then kind of decide for yourself what you think is right. For me, I feel like there are a lot of holes in what's happened, and the decisions that have been made have definitely not necessarily been good for humanity. Like I'm a big fan of advocating for people taking care of their health and being responsible for their health and not putting it on anybody else, and always looking for, like whatever ways they can to be healthy and to be living their lives to the best of their abilities. And I personally don't feel that we've been able to do that in the last few years. That's just my opinion. Again, everybody's entitled to theirs. I am just really glad that things are changing. And I'm hoping in the future that this, instead of something that divides everybody completely, that it more so becomes a look into, again, like preemptive and nutritional care of just like, instead of like, pushing agendas or this or that, it's just like we could be looking at teaching each other and people how to take care of their bodies properly, so that whatever, happens, we're like not immunocompromised and we're able to deal with it. And we don't have to have such harsh conversations about people being so at risk when we'll have so few at risk, and then our, healthcare is opened up to be able to actually deal with the people, or like help the people that truly need it, that can't, protect themselves.
Very well put. So we're gonna wrap things up here. I just want to ask you a couple more things, and then we'll we'll be done here, Shelby. But what's your kind of like long-term bodybuilding vision for yourself or goal? Do you have a goal to win the Olympia? Where are you at with all that right now?
So a big thing for me is in life, I kind of decided a while back that I would be happy with, kind of whatever direction my life takes. Yeah, I would like, I really, really do want to turn pro this year. It's really close to my heart, and I've been working really hard for it. I would love to continue on as a pro, and being on the Olympia stage one day would be amazing. I really do want that. If at some point in my life it comes to a point where there are other things that I want to do that make me, happy, or whichever, like that I'm gonna, take the time to consider my path. And again, it's just like, for me, it's just doing the very best that I can with what I have right now. Right now, it's that pro card, so that's going to be what I'm going to be working towards. And then once I hit that, we'll kind of plan from there.
Very cool.
But I don't know. I find like I don't want to get. Sometimes people get so caught up in a trajectory, which we should all definitely have a plan and definitely have a trajectory. But it's also enjoying now and appreciating, each day and the people we have in it. And I never want to get away from appreciating what I have right now.
Excellent. So Mutant is your sponsor, and you were on, I posted on my Instagram, tagged you in it, and you reposted, which was super cool. But you were on the last episode of Mutant on a Mission, which that is like just some awesome content that Mutant has been putting out for years. But talk about your sponsorship with Mutant. When did that come to be? And just talk a little bit about their brand and their company.
For sure. So I originally started with Mutant last year, officially as an athlete. A couple months before that, they had seen a shoot that I did for Frank McGrath's clothing line, and they just kind of really liked my look and my vibe. So I kind of started out as just like a model ambassador, I guess. And then after a few months, they kind of just kept and brought me on as a full athlete. And they've been really amazing sponsors. They're super awesome to work with. Really good guys that I'll work over there. I re-signed my contract with them for March. And I will be traveling to FIBO, I think, with them in April, which is super exciting. So I get to see Germany for the first time, which is unreal. But yeah, it's really nice. Their supplements, you know, are all high quality. They've never ever changed their formulas. They've never, you know, made that filled the cracks in with other stuff that maybe shouldn't be in there so that they can, you know, make more money or sell out to like be in Walmart and stuff like that. And I don't know, they're a really good company. I love their products. Great to work with. Yeah, I don't really have a bad thing to say.
And they're a Canadian company and brand, correct?
Yes, they are Canadian. They're based out of BC.
Okay, cool. Awesome. All right, Shelby. So I just want to ask you this, and then I'm going to kind of give you the platform to kind of share anything in closing before I do the outro. But just maybe speaking to that individual or those individuals that you know, or maybe in a dark spot, right? Maybe they're searching, maybe they're trying to find their why or find out who they are. Maybe they've been put in a box and they don't want to be in that box, kind of like the more of your story, so to speak. How can you encourage, or what would you like to say to those individuals that are maybe just not where they want to be today?
For sure. To those individuals, I would tell them to kind of maybe take a step back from their life and take some time to decide what they do want it to look like and what happiness does mean to them. And if they don't know what that is, to maybe start trying things and see what speaks to them, see what they enjoy. And also to talk to people that care about you, because I think that a lot of us, one of the biggest things that we don't do is tell the people that care about us how we're really feeling. And even just, you know, having someone telling you that they're there for you is, you know, it can make all the difference in a day. So I also did a lot of reading of different things, ranging from spirituality to yoga scripts to, I don't know, like not really, I was never really much for self-help, but I find learning and a big thing too, exercise. Moving your body is vital to your brain health, is vital to your body's health, is vital to your heart health, is vital to your entire health. And you cannot be a healthy person, you cannot be a happy person if you aren't moving. And you can't tell me that you can be. And start putting food in your body that is real. And basically stop just like living on whims and doing whatever your head tells you, and set up a plan and start doing things that are good for you. Not because you want to do them, but just because you have to do them. And you may find after even a few weeks of just doing things that are good for you instead of the things that you want to do, that your mindset may shift. Because sometimes it's just being so stuck in these habits and so stuck in not giving our brains and bodies what they need that we don't even know what we're missing. And I feel like creating those healthy habits and letting them kind of work their way through us gives our brain a bit of space to say, okay, now what? Now maybe we can kind of see what else we can do. Now we can decide for ourselves, you know, is this something that's working for us? And if it is, should we keep it up? Should we keep going? What else is there? And this, yeah, I feel like we all know, like, there are so many healthy habits we can start. We just don't want to start them. But again, I think it's just getting out of your head and stop giving yourself the excuse.
Excellent. Now I've got to ask you, because you brought up books. I'm a huge bookworm. I love learning. I like to read what I want to read. I don't want to be told what to read like you are in school, right? So, is there one book just off the top of your mind, or maybe there's a couple that you would recommend or that you found really important or impactful to you?
There is one that well, there's a couple that I love, but there's a lot. There is one that I read that actually helped me shift, like especially in terms of kind of being okay with my father's passing and forgiving kind of the world. It's called The Shack. I cannot remember the author's name. I think they made a movie about it actually, but you know, always read the book, don't watch the movie. And it's basically, it kind of like helps you see that just forgiving, you know, people and things in your life that have happened and how to move on from that. It gives you a lot of different perspectives. Essentially, it's about this man who meets, and I'm not Catholic, well, raised, but I'm not Catholic by any means or Christian by any means, but it is about this man meeting the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit in this cabin where something really bad happened earlier in his life. And the scenarios and the conversations they have are just really, I don't know, they just really make you think about like kind of what's important in life and what we really need to let go of and in order to move forward and really start loving ourselves and living for each day.
Very cool. Yeah, that's, I mean, I've heard of that book. That's, I mean, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, that was like, I mean, #1 bestseller. So very popular, and I appreciate you sharing that. So Shelby, that's going to kind of wrap up our conversation. I want to give you the opportunity. If there's anything kind of in closing that you want to share or say, any other sponsors, any shout outs, any people that you want to kind of talk about or just mention, the platform is yours, and then I'll do the outro, and that'll be a wrap. Okay.
No pressure. I guess big shout out to Mutant for getting me and helping me be the bodybuilder that I am today, as well as all my family and friends, my boyfriend. And I'm just really grateful to be where I am today. And I hope to, you know, be a lot, I don't want to say a lot more than I am, because I am what I am, but I'm just able to grow within the bodybuilding world and also help people if I can with my journey and what I've gone through. And because I think that's a big message is using, you know, our paths and our journeys to help others and see their potential and how they can be in their own lives. So yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a good chat.
For sure. You're very welcome. What's your Instagram, and is that the best way for people to touch base with you if they want to connect with you?
Yes. So yes, I do online coaching. So if you want to give me a shout, my Instagram is Shelby, but the E is a 3 _Ann. And yeah, that's my Instagram. If you ever have any questions, if you want to ask me about what to look for in a coach, if you want to ask me about any other aspects about bodybuilding, questions that I can answer for you, I'd be more than happy to. And otherwise, yeah, thank you for having me.
Cool. Yeah, you're very welcome, Shelby. It was a great conversation, and I appreciate you taking some time just to share your story. Okay.
No problem at all.
Cool. Those of you who are tuning in to another episode of Behind the Muscle podcast, I just want to say thank you to you. If it wasn't for you, the podcast wouldn't exist. So I appreciate all of you supporting the podcast. I appreciate all of you coming back, listening, watching. It's just awesome to see the Instagram, the YouTube growing, and Behind the Muscle podcast community growing. So thank you so much. Just a couple quick things before we close out today. If you would please make sure you are subscribed to the YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. That's really important because I release all of these episodes first on YouTube, and then I'll distribute them to the other podcast platforms. I just want to make sure that everybody is aware also Behind the Muscle podcast isn't just available on YouTube. We're also on iTunes. We're on Castbox, kind of like all the major players in terms of podcast platforms. You can find Behind the Muscle. So if you don't like YouTube, you don't want to be on YouTube, you don't want to subscribe to the channel on YouTube, that's okay. You can listen to Behind the Muscle podcast on iTunes or whatever your favorite podcast platform is. And then one other quick favor I'd ask of all of you, please take this episode with Shelby, share it on your Instagram stories. Make sure you tag Shelby, tag Behind the Muscle, so that we know you listened to this episode specifically and found great value in it. And then finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.